Right. So as we've seen, there have been numerous case updates regarding Julian Assange. The United States has been granted limited permission to appeal the decision of Judge Baretzer not to extradite Julian Assange. A key witness for the U.S. prosecution, nicknamed Siggy the Hacker, who's from Iceland, admits that he lied about Julian Assange in order to paint him as a cyber criminal, as a hacker, and that there was a conspiracy to commit computer intrusion and so on, right? So these are two major developments. There's another one regarding the British courts and WikiLeaks, which I'll have more for you very soon. And here we have another update. So the United States has said that they are willing to allow Julian Assange to serve his sentence in Australia, perhaps. And another assurance that they're trying to give the British courts is that they will not place Julian Assange under special administrative measures. Now hold on right there, because the mainstream media is reporting it like that. Like, oh, look, the United States is not going to put him under special administrative measures. No, that's not what the U.S. is saying. They're saying they might not. And they reserve the right to put him under special administrative measures. It's a worthless reassurance. It means literally nothing. And we're going to go through why. So this is from the New York Times. Okay. If a British court permits the extradition of the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to face criminal charges in the United States, the Biden administration has pledged that it will not hold him under the most austere conditions reserved for high security prisoners. No, again, it said it might not that it will not, right? Continuing, and that if he is convicted, it will let him serve his sentence in his native Australia. Those assurances were disclosed on Wednesday as part of a British High Court ruling in London. The court accepted the United States government's appeal of a ruling that had denied its extradition request for Mr. Assange, who was indicted during the Trump administration on the grounds that American prison conditions for the highest security inmates were inhumane, right? Now, let me show you, this is what from the Crown Prosecution Service, okay? So they're saying on what grounds the U.S. will be allowed to appeal. Again, this is why we talk about a limited appeal, right? So the United States says we want to appeal A, B, C, D, E, whatever, literally A, B, C, D, E, and then the High Court says, no, we can allow you to appeal this point and this point, but we're not letting you appeal this point, right? So some points they've allowed and some points they haven't. The points that they did allow the U.S. to appeal are A, B, and E, okay? So the most important one, well, they're all important, obviously, but relating to what we just read, ADX, you can see here, ADX is, so you have to understand something, right? If Assange is sent to the U.S., he'll be placed in pretrial before he's even convicted by this corrupt court in Alexandria, which is, again, it's an inhumane prison. He'll be in administrative segregation. This is where they had Chelsea Manning, and she tried to take her life. It's horrendous. And if he's convicted, because the jury pool is made up of CIA people and you know, CIA spooks, so they'll most likely certainly convict him, he'll be sent to ADX Florence, which is the only federal super maximum prison in the U.S. Federal. They still have other super maximum prisons, right? But this is the last federal one. And this is where they put the shoe bomber. This is where they put, you know, the worst of the worst. You know, you have to ask yourself, why the hell is a journalist being sent there? Why is Julian Assange being placed with the worst criminals in the United States? Why should he be in any jail? And we can already ask these questions, and we already do in the UK. Why is Julian Assange in any jail to begin with? And on top of that, in Belmarsh Prison, which is, you know, in the UK, you have prisons categorized from A to, I think, D, and A being the most high security. What is he doing in Belmarsh Prison? This just shows you it's political. It's political. That's what it is. So over here, I'll read you E. The fifth ground is the United States has provided the United Kingdom with a package of assurances which are responsive to the district judge's specific findings in this case. In particular, the United States has provided assurances that Mr. Assange will not be subject to SAM's, special administrative measures, or imprisoned at ADX, unless he were to do, here's the best part, right? Unless he were to do something subsequent to the offering of these assurances that meets the test for the imposition of SAMs or designation to ADX. The United States has also provided an assurance that the U.S. will consent to Mr. Assange being transferred to Australia to serve any custodial sentence imposed on him. So several points here. Several points. Now, some of you might be wondering, what are special administrative measures? Again, I've covered this extensively during the extradition hearing. In the United States, this is the worst thing that can happen to you, right? As a prisoner. I mean, Bill Clinton came up with this in the 90s. It's a regime under which prisoners are placed in solitary confinement. You're never allowed any contact with other prisoners, let alone your family. You will never see the sun again. You are in your cell, I think it's 23 hours a day. You're allowed one 30-minute phone call a month or two 15-minute phone calls, and you have to notify 2 weeks in advance so that the FBI can get an agent to make sure, to monitor what you're saying. Again, that's not like we think they're monitoring. No, this is outlined. All the telephone calls are monitored. Your conversations with your lawyers are monitored. Your lawyers are placed under a gag order. So, your lawyer could come and visit you in a Supermax, and they're not allowed to talk about the condition that you're in. They're not allowed to say any of this. The United States has the stones to talk about human rights. They have the stones to talk about a free press, about democracy. They're trying to put a journalist in the same conditions they put Al-Qaeda people in. I mean, this alone tells you everything you need to know. Unbelievable. So this is special administrative measures. You want to see what a cell looks like? Here you can have an idea. So you'll be locked in one of these for the rest of your life, right? Very nice, right? Very democratic. So I want to play you a clip over here from Assange's partner, Stella Morris. And she responded to this so-called proposition from the US. And then I also have some things to add from court, and you'll see.
Video because I'm reading a lot of misleading reports and commentary on social media and news reports about what the current status is. And I'm really disappointed because what's happened is that the DOJ has given a statement to some press, and the press has published it unquestioningly without asking specialists in assurances and without actually asking some critical questions. So I'm going to break it down a little bit. But let's first remember where we're at. Julian won his case in January, and the US is now appealing that victory. And it is telling the UK that it will not place in Julian under certain conditions. But let's first remember what this is all about. Julian is being prosecuted for journalistic activities, pure and simple, receiving, possessing, and communicating to the public information that he received from a journalistic source. He is being prosecuted and criminalized for acts of journalism. So any so-called undertakings by the United States are laughable because the United States should not be putting journalists in prison in the first place. But when you come to the undertakings, you see that they're not worth the paper they're written on because they're not even enforceable. The US has said that they don't intend to put Julian in ADX Florence or put him under a regime called SAMS. SAMS is the condition where they put you, basically bury you alive, where you cannot speak to your friends or your family, and even your lawyers are gagged from talking about how you are, what your conditions are, or your case basically in public. And ADX is just one of many Supermax prisons. So when the US says we're not going to place him in ADX, they are not saying that they will not place him in Supermax.
Right, so that's an extremely important point. Just to interject quickly, ADX is a prison, right, in Colorado, and it's the last federal Supermax. You have other Supermax prisons. They're not federal, but they still exist, right? If I'm not mistaken, MCC is one of them in New York. And incidentally, the former warden of that prison, Baird was her name, right? So she gave testimony during the extradition hearing, right? I covered it on the channel, and she explained, literally the prison warden, I think she knows, she explained how inhumane this thing is. And again, I'll continue. I just want to let Stella finish, of course, and then, I'll break down more things. Yep.
There are multiple prisons that they could choose from. Regardless of those points, it's not actually up to the Department of Justice or the Bureau of Prisons about where they're going to place Julian, because even in their documents to the United Kingdom, they say that this could change once he's in US custody, because in consultation with the head of the CIA may decide that actually he should go to SAMS and he should go to ADX. The CIA is the same agency that is behind its agents plotting to kill Julian in the embassy, kidnap him, targeting his lawyers, spying on his legal meetings, even targeting our 6-month-old baby. So does anyone doubt that this agency would not recommend putting Julian in special administrative measures once he's in the United States? Then there's an undertaking about Australian custody, that once he's in the US, he can serve out his sentence in Australia. Actually, prisoner transfers, and in this case as well, would only take place once he had exhausted all the appeals mechanisms. That means that as long as the case is in the courts, which could take a decade or even 2 to reach the Supreme Court, Julian would remain in a US prison under atrocious solitary confinement, atrocious conditions that the magistrate's court judge said would end his life.
Right, so very important points there. I remember this from the defense arguing this in court, that it's not up to the Department of Justice to decide whether he's placed under SAMS. This is the CIA director, and it's at the discretion of the CIA director and the Attorney General, right? They're the ones who decide. We know that they want to put Julian Assange under SAMS. They were arguing to do that in court, dude. I remember listening to them explaining how, oh no, SAMs are not as bad as you say they are, right? That's the first argument they made, that SAMs are not that bad, right? They tried to discredit Maureen Baird, who's this, again, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. She's the former warden of MCC, right? Where it's in New York. And she oversaw a special administrative measures regime. They tried to discredit her, like, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about. SAMs are not so bad. And then they tried to say also, there's an appeals process. You have like a 4-step program where you can improve your conditions in the prison, subject to good behavior and things like that. And then the defense and the expert witnesses called by the defense were arguing, yeah, but that's never happened. There is literally no one who's ever been successful with these so-called appeals under SAMs to get, and there's no gray area when it comes to SAMs. It's a very strict regimen. These are the conditions. That's it. I want to play you very quickly a clip from, this is literally from ADX Florence, the former, ADX Florence in Colorado. This is the former warden, Robert Hood, okay? So listen to what he says. He was running the prison that they want to put Assange in. So he would know. Okay, take a look. This is from a CNN documentary.
Like Ramzi Youssef, the 1990. We're looking at people like Ramzi Youssef, the 1993 World Trade bomber. Timothy McVeigh was there. Nichols is still there. The shoe bomber, the Unabomber, you can go on and on. You're designing it so the inmates can't see the sky, intentionally. When it really hits you is that you're looking at the beauty of the Rocky Mountains in the backdrop. When you get inside, that's the last time you'll ever see it. As you're pulling up to this complex, there's shotguns in plain view, there's 9mm on this tear gas. They're going by 12 gun towers, and that's before you even say hello to anyone. You'll be in leg irons, a belly chain, handcuffs, and you're passing hundreds of cameras. It's almost all concrete, You're going to be in that box, these 84 square feet of room, most likely for the rest of your life, in my opinion, far much worse than death. You're looking at people.
You heard the man. He said far worse than death. That's the guy who was running the prison. He knows, I would say. Far worse than death. That's what it's like being there. That's where they want to send a journalist. You call that a democracy? You call that a democracy? This guy, Assange, is not American. He never done any of these crimes they're accusing him of in the first place. Never mind in America. They're trying to reach over the Atlantic and kidnap him and put him here. We know in court from the expert witnesses from the defense that it's the CIA who hate Assange's guts because he exposed their crimes about rendition and kidnapping and torture, that they can decide, the director will decide to put him under SAMS. If you look at this assurance, so-called assurance, which as Stella correctly points out, is not even worth the paper that it's written on, look what they say. They say that he'll not be subject to SAMS or imprisoned at ADX unless he were to do something subsequent to the offering of those assurances that meets the test for the imposition of SAMS or designation to ADX. So they're saying that it's subject to good behavior, basically. You know, if he behaves, then we won't put him under SAMS. Okay, let me tell you a story that, again, this is from court, right? When I was in London. This was brought up by the defense. This was brought up by Lewis, Madam Lewis, who is the lawyer, okay, the defense lawyer for Abu Hamza. Abu Hamza is locked up in ADX, in this jail, okay? As I told you, they monitor your conversations, your letters going in, going out, your phone calls, your conversations with your lawyers. Abu Hamza, told someone in his family, give my love to my grandson. Something like that, I'm paraphrasing. He just said something completely mundane and trivial, like give my love to my grandson. Okay? His grandson is literally 1 year old. Do you know what the US did? They accused him of saying something in code. Like they said that, oh, he's transmitting a message in code to his 1 year old grandson. They put him under SAMS for another year because he said, give my love to my grandson. And you expect them to treat Assange fairly? Look, they're literally saying here, yeah, he won't be under SAMS unless he were to do something. What, like say, give my love to my kids? Oh my God. This is I don't know. I don't even know what to call this. It's just barbaric. This is barbaric, honestly. Literally barbaric, archaic. And again, you really have to understand that the United States has a history of unfairly jailing, people, putting them in places like Guantanamo Bay, kidnapping, torturing them. They don't care. And they argued in court that they were going to put Assange in SAMS, and SAMS are not so bad. And that all of these things, and there's like an appeal thing. And you know what they said also? The prisoners, they can have recreation. Do you know what recreation is in ADX Florence? You as a prisoner, you can leave your cell to go into another empty cell with literally no one there. That's recreation. There's no medical care, right? Assange has Asperger's, he has depression. He will receive not even a fraction of the medical care that he would get as a free man. In jail, never mind as a free man, right? It's horrific what they're doing, really. You can't trust anything they say. It's all lies. The entire case is built on lies. Why would you trust anything they say? As Stella said, this is literally the organization, the CIA, who would decide whether he can be under SAMS, tried to steal his kid's diaper. They spied on him in the embassy. They were discussing a plot to assassinate him, and you trust them. So another thing I wanted to talk to you about is Gary McKinnon. Gary McKinnon, he's a good friend. I've interviewed him just after the Assange thing. He committed the biggest computer hack in history. He hacked NASA, the Department of Defense, the Air Force, the Navy. I put the whole list up in the interview. It's over here. I forget. There's too many organizations, right? So they tried to extradite him as well, right? This is on my website, RichardMedhurst.com, under the articles section, right? So they tried to extradite him. Before there was even an extradition treaty, actually, they were in the process of writing it, right? So this is the same legal framework they're trying to use against Assange, that they used against Lori Love. Gary McKinnon was the first one to really go through this. And he battled it for 10 years. And I want to show you, I asked him a question about these assurances. Take a look, right? So this is my question over here in bold. I said, the U.S. Department of Justice gave reassurances that you wouldn't be locked up inside a supermax prison. They have also attempted to downplay this possibility with Julian Assange. Do you believe they are being honest, or will he likely end up in a federal supermax like ADX Florence? And Gary says, the DOJ is never honest. They rely on lies and various forms of pressure tactics. Yes, they offered me a multitude of assurances, but refused to put them in writing, so I wasn't assured. I think they will treat him as badly as they legally can. Gary's extradition was blocked by Theresa May, which is probably the only thing good thing she's ever done, on health grounds, because he has Asperger's and he had already exhausted a high court and everything. Exhausting legal battle. I mean, absolutely crippling legal battle for 10 years. It drains you. This is the whole point. And this is what, thankfully they could not get their hands on him. They also lied and exaggerated about the things he did. They accused him of causing, tons of damage. Complete. Even the hacking thing is not true because a lot of these computers had a blank password. Anyway, Gary McKinnon and Lori Love, they had their extraditions blocked. I'm praying they block Assange's as well, right? But you have to understand something, that even if they did, this is unfair what they're doing to him. He's been persecuted for a year, for a decade now, for 10 years, right? And what the United States is trying to do now is they're trying to drag out the legal process. Do you understand? This is part of the punishment. We even had that email, that internal memo where they said that the goal is to persecute Assange, to have him jumping from one jurisdiction to the next, even if it's 25 years. This is the point, man. This is the point. They try to break you physically and mentally. They smear you. They lie about you. They vilify you. They paint you as some kind of monster. They accuse you of every crime under the sun. This is because they want to punish you for exposing their war crimes. This is because they want to punish you for telling the truth. And this is what they're trying to do. Just like Stella said, even if, this thing about Australia works out, I mean, this thing could take decades. Also, this point about serving the sentence in Australia. Look, man, of course, a regular jail is better than ADX Florence. But why should he be in any jail? Any jail is unacceptable. Do you understand this? Serving 175 years in Australia is just as unacceptable as serving 175 years in the United States or Britain. They're missing the point here. Do you understand? The guy's a journalist. He didn't commit any crimes. These are standard, common journalistic practices, what he did, right? Soliciting, possessing, disseminating, publishing classified information. Journalists do this all the time. They're trying to go after him because he did an excellent job, right? And WikiLeaks challenges imperialism. That's why they're going after him, and they're trying to drag this out and punish him. So I don't care, if they make these reassurances which are worth they're worth nothing. They're toilet paper. They're liars. They lied about even Abu Hamza, right? They also, like I said, they punish people. They say, oh, we're going to do this and that. You'll get medical care. Sure. We won't place you under SAMS. And then they screw you. They have a history of doing this, right? As Gary McKinnon can attest to, as Abu Hamza and as numerous other people can attest to. It's not conjecture, it's a fact. They lie. The United States lies. The whole case is built on lies. And so whether Assange serves 175 years in Australia or Britain or on the moon or in ADX Florence, all of them are unacceptable, right? He's already been arbitrarily detained in the embassy, 2 years in Belmarsh. He's not convicted of a crime. People need to remember something. Julian Assange has not been convicted of any crime. Why is a journalist who has not been found guilty of any crime in a maximum security prison in London? Why is the United States trying to kidnap him and put him in a super maximum federal prison? The man is innocent. He's unconvicted. He's convicted of nothing. He's not serving a sentence. He's literally doing nothing in Belmarsh except being punished by the United States and the UK, right? It's important to understand that, Assange was convicted unfairly of a bail violation. Although he didn't jump bail or violate his bail. He was given political asylum, right? By Ecuador. That's his right under international law. So don't fall for this smear that they try to say about him, right? That's important to note. And he already served the sentence for that, which was the maximum. They gave him the maximum one in Belmarsh, right? So it's a 50 weeks, right? Basically a year. He's already served it long ago. Why is he still there now? He's been 2 years there, right? Anyway, I also want to raise another point over here. This is from Alexander Mercouris, and he talks a little bit about the United States proposition or reinsurances, as they claim they are. Take a listen. This was on Consortium News. They did wonderful work.
Obviously, it's as John said, these promises the US is making are unenforceable. And as we've seen in the past, they're not to be relied upon anyway. But all of these promises, all of these assurances could have been made to Buritsa at the trial, and they weren't. Now, the Americans are saying, the US government is saying, well, this was because we were taken by surprise. We didn't expect all these issues to be brought up in this way. Now, of course, I don't take that seriously. I can't believe anybody would take that seriously. But if that were true, they had the option then of applying for a postponement. They say, well, we need time to absorb all of this and come up with our responses and say what we want to say. Well, they didn't do that. On the contrary, they opposed every application for a postponement that the defense made. So I don't really see how this is going to hold together at the final appeal hearing. I think that they're going to have serious problems with this particular appeal. Now, this is to say an unusual case is an understatement, but desperate was how you described these grounds of appeal at the beginning, or at least I think that's what you said. That's how they look to me. I think this is going to be extremely difficult come November. And if the High Court decides to allow the appeal and greenlight the extradition on the basis of these grounds of appeal, well, firstly, that will be disturbing and hopefully subjected to a further appeal to the Supreme Court. But it would also be an extraordinary attempt to push the envelope to try to help the United States out of what is, frankly, a very difficult position legally. So I don't think we should put too much in the fact that they've been granted permission to appeal. And on the face of it, these grounds of appeal don't look at all strong.
Alexander, I want to read you something that Craig Murray, the former British ambassador and blogger, wrote back on January 6th, 2 days after Buritsa's decision, which in hindsight is extremely fascinating now that we know what we know. He wrote, quote, "I am not sure that at this stage, the High Court would accept a new guarantee from the USA that Assange would not be kept in isolation or in a supermax prison. That would be contrary to the affidavit from Assistant U.S. Attorney Gordon Crumberg, and thus would probably be ruled to amount to new evidence." So my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that in an appeal, you cannot put forth new evidence. You can only go in the trial. So is this new evidence to this offer not to put him in supermax, which is what Craig was suggesting back in January?
It is new evidence, and that actually begs many questions about what the grounds of appeal that have been allowed actually are, because of course it is new evidence. I can't really see how you can come along and say, well, actually, this is what we're going to do. I wonder whether the real thing that's being looked at here, the sort of thin point that they're allowed to say is, well, Buritsa was wrong to go ahead and consider all this evidence about the prison conditions when we weren't given the opportunity to state our case. And if we had been given that opportunity, we would have been able to say all of these things, and all these problems that have been raised could have been allayed. As I said, that comes up with a fundamental problem.
This is very important to note because, as Alexander is saying, this argument that the United States is making that, oh, look, we won't place him under SAMS if he behaves, which is not an assurance, and he can serve his sentence in Australia. They didn't say this in court. They didn't make this argument in court. This is new evidence, right? As they're saying. And you can only submit new evidence under extraordinary circumstances. So again, I'm not as qualified as Alexander, of course, but he himself is saying that it's odd that the United States is being given the chance to submit new evidence, usually in an appeal, right? As Joey also is pointing out. Shout out to Joey from Consortium. He's great. And, the U.S. didn't make these arguments in court. So it shouldn't be allowed to raise them in appeal. The appeal, they should be based on things that were said in court. And as Alexander is pointing out, the United States never asked for time to take a break and get their arguments together and then say this. No. So it's really weird. It's really bizarre. But in any case, I really want to highlight how these reassurances by the U.S. are not reassurances. They're worth absolutely nothing. The U.S. has a past of lying about these reassurances, of not following through on them. With Gary, they wouldn't even put them in writing. So, I mean, this is very important to note. And it's still absurd even if he were placed in any jail, not just ADX, or even if he were placed in Australia and not the U.S., he should not be in a prison for journalism, right? This is unacceptable. And the mainstream media, the way they're reporting on this is, it's dishonest. Again, they either don't understand the case or they're purposely trying to twist it to make the Biden administration look merciful. No, the United States is not the United States is not saying we will absolutely not put him under SAMS. They're saying maybe we won't. That's a big, big difference.